This is a Fox 12 podcast.
Welcome to Beyond the Broadcast. My name is Ward Jallis. I'm an investigative reporter and anchor here at Fox 12. In Beyond the Broadcast, we look at some of the behind-the-scenes information about some of the top stories we're working on here at Fox 12. And today we're joined by my fellow investigator, Spencer Schott, who recently did a story on butane torches and some of the dangers that they pose. First of all, tell us a little bit about this story and how you kind of got involved in this.
Yeah, so butane torches are something that you find everywhere. You see them at grocery stores, convenience stores, you can buy them at smoke shops. But what really took a latch on this story is the problems they are causing. They are causing fires. They are causing deep burns that are leading to amputations. Butane torches might seem innocent, but they are causing a huge problem throughout our community.
All right, well, without further ado, let's check out your story.
3 people were injured after an explosion in a Woodburn hotel room back in November. Earlier this year, a popular lunch spot went up in flames in northwest Portland, causing the roof of Elephant Delicatessen to collapse. Then on March 2nd,
I actually had no clue until later that it was my friend.
a man died after the tiny home he was in burned to the ground.
He probably fell asleep with the torch.
Fire investigators determined that all 3 fires were started by a butane lighter. Recently, butane torches have become commonplace.
And do you have a butane torch?
I do.
You're not supposed to have them here, but I mean, everybody's got a torch.
They're sold at multiple places, from cooking stores to smoke shops, and even at some gas stations. And it seems everyone who has one
Most of them, they just have a little slide device.
That's dangerous too.
knows someone who's been hurt by a torch.
I've had friends that burn across their face. I've had friends fall asleep and light up their whole tent on fire. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
Some of these burns along here are, though, they're not as bad as that scar,
But those injuries pale in comparison to what Dr. Mark Thomas keeps seeing at the Legacy Oregon Burn Center.
It's usually on extremities, so arms and legs, and it's isolated to a very specific region on that extremity. So it goes down to their tendons and bones and whatnot. As they pass out, they kind of bend over, and that hand kind of goes to that lower thigh area, knee area, and so it's affecting joint spaces a lot more than usual, and that's leading to more and more amputations.
After many patients told Dr. Thomas they were burned while smoking, he reached out to Dr. Honora Englander at OHSU's Improving Addiction Care team, and they teamed up to start a study.
What we did find was that among people who are hospitalized or present to emergency departments with burns, over half fall into this group of people who use a smokable drug, which is a really important finding.
Digging deeper, they found a lot of people who use smokable drugs prefer to use butane torches rather than a lighter.
Because the wind, the wind doesn't put it out. You can still light your cigarette in the wind. That's why I have mine.
Anyone that uses a pipe like I do has to use a butane because the lighter makes your pipe all black. But it heats it up faster.
While these torches burn hotter than lighters, the real danger comes from the locking mechanism used to keep the flame on.
turn the gas on. So it'll stay on until you twist
Most
the
of them-
fuel off.
Using with that lock fixed on, particularly if somebody's using a sedating drug like fentanyl, can lead to these really catastrophic burns.
The study highlights that all of these severe burns are preventable, but looking into the cause of the burns is just the first step.
If we're going to make a difference, it's going to lobbying to try to change how the butane torches are used. Again, is if we can take that locking mechanism off, that would be the first step. And obviously spreading education to the community about the dangers of smoking.
You know, a lot of times in the news industry, you know, you're working. I actually know the story very well because a lot of times we're working on similar things at the same time. And this is it's really appropriate that we're both here, I feel like, because we kind of congealed this into one and we ended up with that story we have there.
Because your angle was talking more about
the Woodburn explosion. The
Yes.
first video you see, I mean, there was a motel explosion, and it turned out it was caused by one of these butane torches and a refilling product, I believe, that caused the explosion. And then I heard you were working on this and was like, this is so weird. We're both working on the same story because this is an issue that's growing right now.
butane torches have become such a widespread issue for folks who are going to the hospital, for retailers they come to their shop, like the Elephant Delicatessen. They came to work one day and their roof was on fire because someone had a butane torch outside. And so these torches are so dangerous because it is a constant flame versus a lighter. You click it a couple of times, it's a weak little flame, you can blow it out. You cannot blow out a butane torch. It is, like the name implies, a torch. It is a constant flame. And that is what is leading to all of these problems, the explosions, the fires, the burns that Dr. Englander was talking about that go so far deep into their muscle, their tendons, down to the bones. And that is really what is causing all these problems, is that sustained flame. And that's what is the crux of the story, is they are trying to get rid of that locking mechanism. When you talk to like the manufacturers, when you read the labels of the butane torches, the locking mechanism is there to keep the torch off, actually. So when you are refilling it with butane, putting more butane in, you're supposed to lock it so that it doesn't accidentally spark. You have butane all over your hand. That could cause a lot of damage. So the lock is there to keep the torch off, but so many people use it to keep the torch on.
And like that researcher said, I think was one of the biggest takeaways from this, is that more than half of the cases they looked into were people who were using these butane torches to use to smoke, for drugs. And I think a lot of these stories that we've covered, like the Elephant Delicatessen story, started out with somebody just smoking something and then starting this huge fire, right? Noting that, though, and one thing I took away, I think one of the biggest takeaways from the story, you were very able to easily find people who are willing to talk about the use of these butane torches, including that guy with like the scars on his hands. So yeah, like this is a very common street problem right now.
We were wondering who we were going to talk to for this story, because we got the researchers, but we wanted people who were impacted by butane torches. So we were thinking, what is the best way to go about this? We ended up just going with man on the street interviews, and the first person we asked was like, hey, do you have a butane torch? He pulled one out of his pocket. The second person we asked, they're like, oh, I have one too. I actually have another one in my backpack. Every person that we talked to who is an unhoused individual living on the street had a torch. And kind of how you got into the story through the Woodburn Hotel.
Yeah.
I got into the story through the tiny home in North Portland that burned down.
Yeah.
And when that story first aired, we were just...
At the Safe Rest Village.
At the Safe Rest Village, yeah. When we were first airing that story, talking to management, they didn't want to put in that piece about, oh, everyone in this home has a torch. He probably fell asleep with the torch, because it was unconfirmed at the time. But then when we got the fire report from the fire marshal of what caused this was a sustained flame, that's when we had that conversation of, oh, we are comfortable using that soundbite from this witness whose friend died in that house fire because they had a torch. And she said, everyone in the Safe Rest Village has a torch.
I thought that was such a telling bite from that story of, oh, well, you're not supposed to have them here, but everybody has them.
Everyone does. And we found that as we were walking down the street. We went to the train station downtown. We went by a couple underpasses. We walked all around and just asked people who were camping out on the street if they had one. And literally everyone we talked to had a torch either in their back pocket or in their backpack.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then there's that locking mechanism. I wonder, when you were talking with anyone, and if not, that's okay, but did anyone mention any specific measures that leaders or law enforcement are taking right now to maybe raise awareness for this issue, about this locking mechanism, getting those things removed? Like, what does this look like? What does the policy fight look like?
So this study that found more than 50% of people being treated at the Legacy Burn Center are going in because of butane torches or because they used a smokable device. This study is just the first step. They wanted to put what they're seeing in the emergency rooms on paper, so this next legislative session, they can bring their findings to lawmakers and say, hey, this is a big problem. We need to address this, and this is how we think it should be addressed. By passing legislation that says you can't put a locking mechanism on a butane torch. Or if you do put a locking mechanism on, make sure it only locks it off. It doesn't lock the flame on. And so there's a bunch of steps that they are going to be taking next legislative session. But right now, because Oregon only comes to session once a year, we have a long session, we have a short session, Next year is a long session, so this is something that they think will be able to be tackled next session. But in the meantime, while we wait for lawmakers to come back to Salem, it's the public information aspect of telling folks who use drugs, who smoke drugs, whether it's a pipe or, as we saw, someone lighting a cigarette with a butane torch right next to their face, just flat out telling them not to do that. Telling them how to use these safely so that they don't end up in the burn center.
I do have another question too, and I'm wondering because when I first started this, I mean, again, we were in the very preliminary stages of things when I was involved, so I'm not super aware of kind of where things went. But I kept coming to this question of like, again, with several stories we've done before, why is this such a big thing right now? Like, why is this becoming more prevalent, it seems like? Or has it been around and we just didn't know? I mean, like, what were officials able to tell you about? Is this an increasing issue? And like, if so, why?
They said that it is an increasing issue. The burn center has been in Oregon for so long. It is the one at Legacy is the only burn center in the state of Oregon. And so they have noticed that these burns have becoming more prevalent because there is a larger homeless population. There is more drug use out in the streets and folks are using more. And so that is kind of snowballed into this other issue of we haven't been able to tackle the whole issue of homelessness. And that is leading to all these other issues that we are seeing in our community.
Very interesting. Okay. I guess I just have one more question, and that is if for people who are out there listening to this and they're hearing about this increasing issue, is there something that we can do, maybe non-butane lighter users, right, to raise awareness about this issue or kind of fight this in any way?
Yeah, like you don't want to go up to someone and just take a butane torch out of their hand because that will lead to other problems.
And they're not illegal. I mean,
no, they're not illegal. You can buy them anywhere. You can buy them at Kitchen Caboodle. You can buy them at a smoke shop. You can buy them at the 7-Eleven on the corner. But making sure that you, like the researcher said, are having these conversations with your family, are having these conversations with your friends, because butane torches a lot of the time are marketed for creme brulee or cooking uses, and making sure that folks who have butane torches in your life, that making sure that they are using them for their intended purposes, not kind of abusing that locking mechanism and keeping that flame going. Another interesting part that we talked about with folks when we asked them, oh, yes, you have a butane torch. We asked them if they knew someone who was burned by a butane torch. And again, they all said yes, and they all had their other stories. In the story you saw when we were outside, it's a blue flame, so it's very hard to see that flame when you're outside. So we heard so many stories of people who would light a cigarette, light their pipe, forget to turn it off because they can't see the flame, and throw that butane torch on a chair, throw it in their truck, throw it on their tent, and that leads to a larger fire. And so making sure that if you are around folks who are smoking, if they're using the butane torch to light up in that way, double checking that torch, making sure that it is off before you set it down.
Did the people that you spoke with have any solutions of their own? Were they like, we need to get rid of these things? Or was it kind of like, why are you doing this story? Everybody uses them. I'm just curious.
No, unfortunately, a lot of folks didn't see, that we talked to on the street, didn't necessarily see the issue of it. They all had their war stories of what happened to them while using a butane torch, but not a lot of them were like, well, I'm going to stop. A lot of them were like, it's the best thing to use because when they're living on the street, a lighter will be blown out by the wind. So when they're trying to even light a cigarette, whether it's lighting a joint, light a cigarette, light a pipe, the lighter isn't as effective. So many of them are so focused and so trained on using the butane torch, they don't want to use anything else. And so that was kind of another crux of the problem of this is a problem that we are seeing in hospital settings, but people on the streets aren't necessarily recognizing it as a problem just yet.
When you were looking into this as well, I know you spoke to doctors at Legacy. Was it Legacy? Right? Yeah, I know you spoke to doctors at Legacy about some of the injuries and whatnot that you've been seeing because of this. And this is not just like superficial burns or anything. We're talking about, you literally said amputations. How does one of these little lighters even cause injuries that significant?
So the lighter itself is not causing the amputation. It's not burning straight through your leg, but it is burning you so hard that you have to get an amputation because there's nothing really left of your leg, of your appendage, of your hand for doctors to reconstruct. So as we were talking to these doctors at Legacy, what they were finding was folks were using a sedative drug like fentanyl, smoking that. The locking mechanism is on the butane torch, and then they pass out from smoking fentanyl with the torch still on, and then their hand would fall down to their knee, their thigh, their other arm. And since that torch is locked on and they are unconscious, they can't move away from the torch. They can't move away from the flame. So that flame is just going through the skin, and then it's going through the muscle, it's going through the tendons, and in a lot of these cases, it's going all the way to the bone of the person. And so when they do wake up, they have this horrendous injury, this horrendous burn that's going all the way to their bone. They get brought to the hospital, and at the burn center, these folks at the burn center are saying there's not a whole lot left to reconstruct. You can't skin graft muscle. And so that's how these torches are leading to all these amputations that we're seeing at the Oregon Burn Center.
Wow. Really interesting. Okay, well, we are getting to the end of our time here. So I guess my last question, Spencer, is just what do you think are some of the key takeaways from this story after all of your research and investigating that you put into this? What do you think some of the audience members maybe who are listening or watching right now could take away from this?
It is that the fine line of, we talked about how a long time ago, people were saying smoking is a safer way of using drugs than injections because with sharing needles, you have all those bloodborne pathogens. And this study is not saying that smoking is no longer the less safe option compared to injections. Smoking is not great in general, but there are safer ways to do it, and butane torches are not the safe way to use these smokable drugs. They're trying to do harm reduction in this case. So when you're talking to an addict, you're not just going to say, stop cold turkey. You're trying to give them safer ways to go about their addiction until they are ready for treatment. And so with this study, they're saying butane torches are not the safe way to smoke. Use a lighter, use a different form of smoking, and hopefully if they keep using the butane torches, they're not going to be using that locking mechanism anymore.
Well, thanks so much, Spencer. That's great reporting. And thank you for watching. This has been Beyond the Broadcast. Each week, we're going to have a new episode right here and a new pair of reporters to break down their process. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Fox 12 podcast. For more content like this, download the Fox 12 app to your phone or any connected device, like your Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or Smart TV.